In today's video, we're going to turn a bunch of these plastic caps into a cat astronaut, or a catstronaut, if you will. Right now, the plastic is all a bit too shiny and smooth, so I have to scrub it down with a wire brush so that the glue and the paint will stick to it later. It's especially important on the plastic caps that have these ridges, as the paint can chip off of the sharp edges if you don't prep them correctly. I also add a bit of EVA foam to a few parts to fill the gaps and to make sure that when I glue all the caps together, they have good adhesion. I probably should have started by clarifying that this is the main body and helmet for the cat astronaut. This clear cap will become the space helmet, and in order to attach it to the main body, I make a connection point out of, you guessed it, another bottle cap. I just need to cut a circle in this cap just large enough to fit the clear helmet inside. And I will keep the helmet separate because it won't be painted like the rest. This purple cap is just to extend the main body out a bit, and it's where the legs will attach to once I build them. And you won't have to wait long because I'm going to make the legs now. I start with this yellow piece here and I cut it down into the two main parts of the legs, the upper leg and the lower leg. These will be sort of the skeleton of the legs, and I'll fill it in with other pieces of plastic and caps. This pink cap will become the hip joint, and I just have to cut away some of the yellow plastic so that it will fit where I want it to fit, just like this. Using a round file, I take away some material to make room for the knee joint. Today that'll be played by this green plastic bead looking piece, but before I can glue that in place, I want to fill in all this open space in the upper leg. I'll use some small cuts of sprue material as well as a breakaway clasp that I cut in half. I glue the knee and the lower leg together, and then I can use more of those sprue pieces to fill out the lower leg. Now all this leg needs is some feet. So I found some extra feet in my bits box, and I'll use those as the base. Since this model is going to be suspended in the air, you'll be able to see the bottom of the feet. So I cut the soles off of an action figure toy, and I'll glue those in place to cover up the original shoe base. The ankle is made from a metal bead, and to make it look like it can actually rotate up and down, I'll add two more beads, one on each side of the ankle. A pin and some EVA foam will help in attaching the foot to the leg. The EVA foam is just to fill the gap in between the pin and the inside of the bead. Then I can trim it to size and attach it to the main leg. And with that, I have one complete leg, and I just have to make a second one to match. To attach the legs to the main body, I drill a hole through the purple cap and then add a length of armature wire. Then two wooden beads that I shaped to fit the curvature of the plastic using my Dremel tool. The legs will be attached to these once everything is painted and weathered. The arms are a lot simpler. They're mostly made from a few pieces of plastic tubing that I cut down into about 3/4 inch pieces. The elbow joint is made from a wooden bead that I drilled a hole through to fit a pin. A bit more EVA foam on the ends will fill the gaps, and I can use the elbow joint to connect the upper and the lower arms. For the hands, I'll be using some Gundam hands and attaching them to a small plastic tube for the wrist. Then a few other pieces of plastic and beads to add some detail and fill any open spaces. And just like the legs, once I make one, I can make a second one to match. Then to attach the arms to the main body, I'll use some half-round wooden beads, and I'll secure them in place with a metal pin. The arms will attach to these once everything is painted and weathered. I want to make a backpack for my kitty astronaut, so I'm starting with a toy backpack, and I'll add some attachments to it so it looks a bit more like it belongs in space. I'm loosely basing this off of NASA's portable life support system mixed with a manned maneuvering unit. These were used by astronauts to regulate pressure, provide oxygen, and move around in space. Plus a bunch of other really important stuff like communication and medical telemetry. I used 2-part epoxy putty to fill the open spaces and attach these two wooden beads that I think look like the top of oxygen tanks. I'll also use epoxy to create an attachment point to the main body. Moving on to the kitty, this whole idea came from this plastic cat head that was part of some broken kid's toy. It has these holes on the top and the bottom, so I'll fill those with some epoxy putty before building the rest of the body, which is made from another breakaway clasp. The arms are made from more sprue pieces, and the tail is made from an armature wire. I'm going to make the tether that attaches the Astronaut to the base. I start with this thick armature wire, and I'll cover it in some heat shrink tubing to add detail. I add one large piece and then a few smaller pieces just for that extra detail. Then I make a simple connection point to the model using a plastic connector piece. Not only does this hold the model up in the air, but it also makes it look like a cattail, so that's pretty fun. The main building is complete, and now I can add all my parts to some paint stands and send them outside to get a coat of white primer. While those dry outside, I throw together a simple base. This is just a peanut butter lid that I've added some plaster of Paris to add some weight and stability. Then I'll add some greeblies to make it look like it's the side of a space station. A quick note on painting: if you're like me and you tend to rush the paint job, you may find that you run into issues like this cracked paint you see here. This is for being too heavy-handed on each layer of primer and applying the layers too close together. Now, luckily it's mostly on the back, so I did get lucky with that. The front is not as crackled. Let's get into color painting, shall we? These are the main colors I'll be using: gunmetal for the thrusters, gray for the backpack and some other details, and orange for the main suit. Now, technically for a NASA spacewalk, they would use the white suits, but I really like the orange pressure suits that are worn during the ascent and entry portions of space flights. These orange suits have been worn by multiple crews since the 90s, and most recently by the crew of the Artemis II. Although the new orange suits worn by the Artemis crew are much more advanced and customized to that mission compared to the ones worn during the Space Shuttle program. And now that we're in the painting process, I think it's a great time to give a shout out to my patrons over on my Patreon. Thank you all so much for the support. Also, if you're liking this video, please do consider dropping a like, consider subscribing, commenting, sharing, all of that fun stuff that helps the YouTube algorithm pick up these videos and share them with others. This build may seem like science fiction, but in reality, there actually has been a cat who has been to space and back. She didn't have a cool space mech suit like this, but she was set into space in 1963 as part of the French space program. Her name was Felicette. At least that was the name that was known publicly. Prior to the launch, she was designated C341. Felicette was one of 14 cats trained for the program and was chosen because she was calm and easy to work with. On the morning of October 17, 1963, she was launched into suborbital flight on a small rocket, the Veronique AGI-47. The flight lasted 13 minutes from ignition to touchdown, and during the flight, scientists were able to collect data on her using electrodes that had been attached to her brain. Felicette survived the flight, but sadly, she was euthanized 2 months later to study how the launch had affected her brain. To this day, she is the only cat to have been to space. She may not be as well known as other animals sent to space, such as Laika the dog or Ham the chimpanzee, but she still is loved by many cat and space lovers alike. In 2019, her contribution to science was honored with a bronze statue of a cat sitting atop the Earth, proudly displayed at the International Space University in eastern France. You just saw me adding weathering in the form of a few different washes, thinned down with water and a small amount of isopropyl alcohol. I'll then add a bit more surface grime with this weathering set, and I find that using my fingers for this instead of a brush is a great way to add fast coverage with ease. The space helmet gets a very thin layer of wash. It's a balance because I don't want it to look too shiny next to the weathered suit, but I also want it to be clear enough that you can still see the cat inside. Then the last step is to just put it all together. Thank you so much for sticking around till the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed this build. I know that the story of Felicette has a sad ending, and I'm sorry if that was a bummer, but I think it's important to share her story. On a lighter note, thank you all so much for watching. I just recently passed 15,000 subscribers, which is totally awesome, so thank you everyone for watching and subscribing. Let me know what you think of this build down in the comment section, and as always, I will see you in the next video.